I'm Josh Amick. I am the new host of the Big Sky podcast. I came here from Arizona State University out in Tempe, but I was at the Phoenix location at the Walter Cronkite School. So I have pretty diverse background in multimedia and doing stuff like podcasts and shooting and editing and things like that. Before that, I grew up in Everett, Washington, just about 25 miles north of Seattle. So I'm familiar with a lot of Washington teams, a lot of California teams. I lived in California till I was about 9, then moved back there when I got a little bit older. But the Big Sky Conference is new to me. I'm familiar with Eastern Washington because I had some college friends from there that went there. But I'm really going to be leaning on you guys until I get more versed in these topics. Okay, Ian, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, my name is Ian Bavona. I'm the sports reporter here for the Columbia Basin Herald in Moses Lake, Washington. Uh, Bulk of my job is covering high school sports here in Grant and Adams County here in Washington on the east side of the state. But I do get to do some college coverage as well, mostly Eastern Washington, a little bit of Washington State as well, Central Washington, and a little bit of the West Side schools. But we like to stick to the east side over here at the Columbia Basin Herald. I've been here a little over 2 years now. I grew up on the East Coast in Virginia. Went to Auburn University in Alabama, where I got to see a lot of football. So obviously, it's very big down there. But yeah, excited to be here and excited to be back for another year of the podcast.
Thank you, Ian. Fritz, you're up next.
All right, I'm Fritz Neighbor. I'm a Montana native, born and raised in Harleton, little tiny town. I went to the school at the University of Montana. Um, Got into sports writing about 87 or so, and was mostly a prep sports writer until about, I guess it would have been '02 with the Billings Gazette. I started covering Big Sky Conference athletics. So seen a lot of Big Sky Conference football, seen a little bit of Pac-12 football. I spent a semester at ASU down in Tempe. Um, and I know quite a bit about the Grizz because I was the beat writer for the Missoulian for Grizz for 9 years, 9 seasons. And I take that back, 11 seasons. And no, I know not quite as much about the Bobcats. Been all over the state working for newspapers, Bozeman, Billings, Missoula, Kalispell.
All right. Thank you. Mark, you're up next.
I'm Mark Nelke. I'm sports editor at the Coeur d'Alene Press. I've been down at the press since 1998, and we mostly cover high schools, roughly 10 high schools in our area, and we cover North Idaho College and a little bit of Idaho Vandals. Before that, I was at the Daily Bee in Sandpoint, started right out of college in 1982. I went to Meade High School in Spokane, then Spokane Falls Community College, and Eastern Washington University, and then basically spent the last 42 years in Idaho. So kind of used to Idaho and kind of interesting to learn more about Montana and Montana State and teams like that. Kind of looking forward to, like Ian said, year 2 of this thing.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right, John, what you got?
All right, well, I'm John Allen. I'm with the Daily Interlake with Fritz and Josh. Just not even at a year yet here. Been about 8 months that I've been working here. Before this, I was a TV anchor, sports anchor in Nebraska. But born and raised in Kalispell, so the Interlake's kind of always been part of my life. So coming back here was an easy choice. Like Fritz, I also went to the University of Montana. Graduated in 2020, so have that connection. Always been around the Big Sky my whole life.
So thank you everyone for the introductions. So now we're going to get in to the first part of the podcast. So the preseason rankings came out a few weeks back, and we had 5 Big Sky teams inside of those top 25 rankings. We had Montana at 3, Montana State at 4, Idaho at 7, Sacramento State at 10, UC Davis at 17. Is there any of those teams that you guys feel are ranked too high or ranked too low, or any teams that are also in the Big Sky Conference that weren't ranked at all that you thought maybe had a case to be in there? And just to switch things up, we'll start with you, John.
Yeah, well, I honestly don't have too many issues. Preseason rankings are fairly arbitrary at times. The top four, though, I feel like, of course, South Dakota State's going to be at the top. I feel like Montana and Montana State could have been interchangeable with North Dakota State, but I don't really see any issues there. The one school I do have questions on, and it's mainly just with the gaps that are left after the transfers, is Idaho. But I'm in the Big Sky, it's just always next man up, next man up. So I don't see any issues with them being able to fill those spots that McCoy and Hatton left. But that would just be my one kind of worrisome spot. And when it comes to just those rankings.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
I was going to mention that too, John, about Idaho. They lost a lot with Woods and McCoy and Hatton and Jermaine Jackson. Lost a lot of offensive firepower. So that's the big question mark. Are they going to be able to, replace those guys and be as good offensively? Their defense is really good. So, maybe the part of the ranking is just hey, they were good last year and, X done well the last few years and we'll keep them there. As for the other ones, whatever, their rankings, and it's a nice place. Eastern, I think, got some votes in one of the polls. They'll be kind of a wild card. Maybe Fritz might know a little bit more about Montana State than the rest of us, is whether that was high enough, that was they're too high or not, losing one of their quarterbacks. And other than that, whatever, we just start there and go on.
Yeah, Fritz, what are your thoughts?
Well, my first thought is I don't really believe in preseason polls, but my other thoughts are, if you look back historically at the Big Sky, even last year, I think they got 2 teams in the final 8. And so when I see 3 or 4 teams in the top 10, I think that's a little bit of an overreach. I think U of M and MSU are obviously the picks to be at the top. Media said so, the coaches said so. And even though MSU's lost quite a bit on the offensive line, I think they're still pretty loaded. And 5 teams ranked is okay. I think they get 4 and 5. And there was one year I thought they would get 6 teams in the playoffs, but 4 in the top 10, that's a little extreme.
Ian, you got anything to add?
No, most of my talking points were pretty much taken already. I kind of had the same feelings about Idaho. Definitely think they should have been in that top 25, but maybe not at that 7 spot. Just kind of with all the losses they had in the transfer portal. Also kind of the same opinion. I don't think preseason ranking should matter too much. Don't take too much into account. I think most of it should be kind of focused on how they look week 1 or week 0 in MSU's case.
Yeah, and kind of to further go on this topic, how much do you guys think the rankings have to do with the scheduling? Like if you think Idaho is maybe ranked way too high, do you think it's maybe because they are going to be facing some opponents they should handle? Or do you think most of these preseason rankings are strictly based off of what they did in the year prior? Anyone can go.
Personally, I think it's more year prior and then maybe a little bit of like transfer portal, whether you're losing guys or gaining guys. I think those are the biggest factors. Scheduling might play a little bit, but I think it's mostly just based on last year, looking at who graduated, stuff like that.
Everyone else agree or have anything to add?
No, I think that's what happens. You fall into the trap of paying attention to what happened a year ago, and a lot of things can change. And yeah, I mean, Idaho was really good. I just don't know how good they're going to be this year. They're really well coached, though. I think they'll figure out a way to get in the playoffs.
All right. Heading on to the next question. We have Brian Wright returning back to the Big Sky Conference as a coach at NAU, and Tim Plough becoming a head coach at UC Davis. Both of those teams finished last year at 5-3. Who do you guys think is going to make the biggest jump as a new head coach, or who do you think might take a seat back? We'll start with you, Mark.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to switch it up.
I went to Catholic school, so I always wait for the teacher to call on me. So, I mean, NAU has historically not, either been mediocre or average and stuff like that. So it's kind of nice to see them have a pretty nice season last year. I know they beat the Grizz and stuff. So it would be nice to see them stay at that level, or even, I don't know if there's much room to get a lot better. As far as UC Davis, that's kind of where Hawkins had them too. And so there shouldn't be much change down there. They should be right there on the fence, getting in the playoffs, and hopefully they don't get hosed like last year.
John, you got anything?
With a new coach too, it all comes down to what the personnel fits into the kind of play style that the coach has. So that's going to be one big thing to look at. Just kind of early season is how well, the old coach's players are meshing with the new coach's style. The transfer portal definitely can kind of change that nowadays, where the new coach can bring in players that he wants. But I just feel like that's going to be the biggest thing. Like UC Davis has shown signs recently of becoming that fringe playoff team every year for the past 5 or so seasons. They've been in the top 25. NAU is just looking to take that next step. They beat Montana last year. Things are always looking up. So whoever can mesh well with their coach, I think that ability is there for both teams.
Ian, you got anything?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the easy answer. I think UC Davis is probably closer to making that jump forward just with how they finished last year. Like Mark said, probably should have been in that playoff or really right on that cusp. And just kind of looking at the returning talent they have, especially offensively, I think they're a little bit closer than NAU is. I'm excited to see kind of how Miles Hastings can do with this move, if he can return to his 2022 self, where he performed a bit better than he did last year, and I think most of the major statistical categories. So I'm excited to see kind of what it's going to look like. Obviously, the last time Plough was there uh, as the offensive coordinator in the late 2010s, they had some really high flying passing offenses. So I'm excited to see what that's going to look like.
Fritz, what do you got?
Oh yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was going to mention I went and covered a Grizz game down at Davis in '09, and the Grizz were very good that year. And Davis had him on the ropes. The quarterback coach was Plough at that time, became the OC the next year, and uh, the Aggies had a quarterback who threw 67 times for 360 and in a 17 to in a 17 to 10 game. And the funny part, well, it wasn't funny at the time, was they had a timer on the lights and they clicked off at 10 o'clock with about 52 seconds left in the game. And so we had to cool our heels while the lights got warmed back up. Took 15 minutes, and then the Grizz intercepted a pass in the end zone to hold on 17 to 10. I think both schools made really good hires. Plough is a former Aggies quarterback, OC. I think he'll keep them on the upswing. I thought NEU was on the upswing with Chris Ball. I was a little shocked when he got dismissed. The signature win over the Grizz, but I think they found a really good guy in Wright, and I'd forgotten he was the OC at Montana State and under Ash for a couple seasons, 2010 and 2011. I think everybody agrees that UC Davis is going to be a little bit better this year, but I think both schools made great hires.
All right. So we kind of talked about this earlier with the transfer portal. Montana State lost a lot of offensive linemen. The big name, Giovanni McCoy, left Idaho. Who are the other players that you think are coming in or are leaving or who are already left, who's going to have the biggest impact on the team? I know a lot of people kind of agree that it was Idaho. Are there any other teams that we're kind of overlooking that might be affected by this transfer portal in a good or a bad way?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. Just kind of looking around some of the incoming transfers down at Weber State. Obviously, they lost some offensive line talent. I think it's only one returning starter. I believe it's their center, if I remember correctly. They brought in a couple of offensive line transfers, including Terrence Caldwell from Cornell, 2 years of starting experience at center. I think that could be a big transfer just with those guys coming in and seeing how that can shake out. Obviously, the big name ones are the ones at Idaho and MSU and that interior offensive line, but that's one that's a little more under the radar. I'm going to be looking out for.
Yeah, and Fritz, I wanted to kind of go back to the point you made earlier. You said that you're not too worried about Montana State losing the offensive lineman that they did. You think that they can replenish that talent. A team who likes to run as much as they do, you don't think losing those starters is going to play much of an impact on them?
Well, I mean, it's going to have an impact, but they also had 2 linemen picked for preseason All Big Sky. One of them is banged up right now, Justice Perkins. But they're bringing in a guy from BYU named Dylan Rollins, who I think will play for him. Perkins being hurt doesn't help, but then Cole Sane, who started 13 games a couple years ago, kid from Darby, Montana, he's going to he's going to move right into center for the time being. I'm trying to think of the other kid's name that. Marcus Weir, he's back on the O line, so they're still going to be really good, I think. It's just kind of the NDSU coaching tree, smash mouth football. I don't see much changing for those guys.
Mark, what do you think?
I'll start with Montana State. I mean, they lost the one quarterback, so I don't know how the other quarterback's going to fit in if they're going to play two quarterbacks again and, get them both beat up during the season. So they're kind of less at 50%, 100% for the playoffs or what. I think for Montana, their biggest recruit might have been keeping Junior Bergen around. I'm sure there was a lot of interest in him in the portal and stuff like that. So keeping him back, getting, Osmo back for what, 10th season, 11th season, something like that. Anyway, it's 6, I think. But anyway, we talked about Idaho. Jack Lane steps in at quarterback. He had a couple good starts the last couple years. Both were against Idaho State, so take that, for whatever it's worth. They were devastated at receiver, lost a lot of guys to either transfer to the NFL, so they had like one guy back that with experience. Their key pickup, well, let's see, they lost 3 cornerbacks to the portal, but they brought in 3 starting cornerbacks from other teams. Probably their biggest transfer portal pickup was the kid from Weber, Abraham Williams. So that'll be interesting to see him. He's a cornerback, kick returner, so he may pick up where JJ left off last year.
All right, Sean, what you got?
Yeah, like kind of mentioned earlier with the top 25, but just Idaho kind of filling those gaps that they have. Anytime you lose your quarterback, definitely getting somebody who's at least started games is a positive for them. But losing McCoy is definitely just leaving a big hole, and that needs to be filled for the entirety of the season. So Montana State just seems like they kind of roll new linemen in all the time. So I'm not too worried about them. They've always been kind of a run-heavy team, especially now with having some running at the quarterback as well. So yeah, I don't feel like they're going to have too much of a problem.
There's a Washington State transfer that looks really good at D tackle for the Cats. He's out of Lewiston, Idaho, Alec Eckert. From what I've heard, he just is a monster. They lost some really good kids on that side of the line too, but they get Brody Grebe back. He's a preseason pick. And then you had another really good player like Eckert. Wasn't playing much at Washington State, but it sounds like he's going to play a ton for the Cats. Just another example of coaches adapting to the transfer portal. They don't really like it, I don't think, but they're adapting to it.
Yeah, Mark, are you familiar with his game at all?
A little bit. I mean, I didn't see Lewiston a lot. They're kind of, middle of the pack at best, so I didn't see a whole lot. But I had heard of him and heard he's a good player. So like Fritz said, he should help. He should help the Bobcats.
Yeah, it's something I wanted to also circle back to, just being a newcomer to this area and to Big Sky in general. Mark, you mentioned that Idaho State, you said take that for, as you will. And then we also mentioned Weber State, kind of 2 teams who seem to not get a lot of respect in the Big Sky. Do you think there's some teams that are maybe being overlooked that usually sit at the bottom of the rankings who can make that big jump in this year?
Weber State has kind of been a pretty good program over the years. Maybe recently they've kind of slipped a little bit. So I don't know. They kind of should be one of the better teams in the league.
Anybody else that people may not be giving the due respect to that you guys think of? Or is everyone kind of, it's preseason, let's see what happens after the first couple weeks?
That's kind of what more I'm under.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right. So enough about what happened or what's going to happen. We got official football coming back Thursday, maybe week 0. It still counts. I'm counting it. We got Montana State taking on New Mexico. New Mexico was 4-8 last year, out of the Mountain West. I know Montana State opened up as 8-point favorites. That line might have changed. What do you guys think about what to expect this week against New Mexico? We'll start with you, Ian.
Yeah, I'll stay consistent with a topic we've discussed pretty heavily on this podcast. I'm looking to see how that offensive line's gelling in that first game, getting some live reps, obviously filling the roles of some new guys, and a pretty heavy dominating rushing attack that they have. That's going to be the big thing I'm keeping my eyes on Thursday.
All right, Fritz, what do you got?
I was thinking MSU was looking pretty good going down there, and then I remembered that Bronco Mendenhall is the new coach in New Mexico, and that's a pretty good get for the Lobos. I think they have a really talented quarterback who played a lot as a true freshman last year. I think it's going to be it's not going to be that easy for MSU. In fact, I think I might even pick the Lobos this week.
Mark, I see you smiling. What are your thoughts? Are you on the same boat?
I don't know. Yeah, I was thinking about that last year. I was thinking of Idaho beating Nevada 33-6 last year. So I guess it's not unusual for a FCS team to, whip up on a FBS team. I would think. Let's see if the one factor that would help New Mexico is maybe how hot it is down there this week, and what they're also at 5,300 feet, and so that does. I've been to Albuquerque. That does take a little getting used to. So those two things, and I think is it Julian Davis? I think the running back. I think is he still out injured? That would hurt. Obviously, Montana State's running game.
Yeah.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of going with that Idaho beating Nevada thing last year. I mean, Nevada's also picked kind of as a back marker in the Mountain West this year. New Mexico's right there even with them. So just kind of basing it, I know different seasons and everything, but Montana State is definitely going to be one of the powers of the FCS this year. It wouldn't surprise me if they just go out there and dictate the pace, dictate the play, and come away with a fairly easy victory.
Okay, so that leads me into the last topic. I was told every week last year you guys made your picks, but this year we're going to have a little more spice to it. I'm going to keep track of your guys' picks, and we're going to see who's really nailing these picks every week. So with Montana State being a 8-point favorite, what's your prediction on this game? We'll go with you, Fritz, because you're kind of leaning Lobos, and I'm kind of on that same page as you because I'm not too familiar with the Big Sky, but I am familiar with Mountain West. So Fritz, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think you and me should just be Lobos, and then these other guys can take the Bobcats. I think they're already sold on the Bobcats. So,
all right.
Well, I'd at least take the points. But yeah, I'll pick New Mexico being at home, and Devin Dampier back at quarterback, and the Bronco Mendenhall era number 2 in the Mountain West starts Thursday.
All right, Ian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's always tough to pick a score, and then picking a score against a team in its first game with a new head coach that throws a little more of a wrench into it. But I'm gonna stick with what I know. I'm gonna stick with the Bobcats, but I'm gonna go a little closer. I don't know if we're doing scores, but probably somewhere between like one score game, probably like 4 points, something like that. Maybe 21-17, just to make it easy.
Okay. All right. Mark, what are your thoughts?
All right, I was leaning toward the Bobcats until our Big Sky expert Fritz said he was kind of leaning more toward.
No, you can't change your mind.
I think I'm going to go along with Fritz. I'm going to say I'm going to pick New Mexico to win that one.
All right, John.
I'll hold my guns on this one. I really don't see New Mexico who are really putting up too much of a fight in this one. It's first game with a new coach. Things can definitely change. I just think there's going to be kind of that growing pain, getting through camp, getting their first reps against another team. I just kind of see Montana State dictating this one from the start, and I think they'll pull it out by about 10.
Okay, so we got John officially saying he thinks that they cover. All right. Well, folks, I think that's all we have for this first episode of the Big Sky Podcast. Stay tuned each week where we'll have the same panel, same time, and we'll have more picks for you next week when week 1 officially starts. But I want to thank my panel, Ian, Fritz, Mark, and John. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and can't wait to see what the rest of the season holds. So thank you, everyone, for being here.